Okay, now that you have an understanding of how the chromatic and the major scale is laid out on the guitar, let's start memorizing the notes on the strings, okay? So we're going to start with the low E. Now when we do the low E, we're also doing the high E because it's the same notes. All right, the high E is just 2 octaves higher. But again, it's the notes the notes are going to be in the same position here. So the first thing to do is you've got to map out the key of C on the particular string you're working on. And in this case, we're working on the low E. So we got to find the C scale on the E string. Now, and we can start with the E note. That's the third note of the key of C. So we can just start on E here. All right, now as we map out the key of C on the E string, or on the string that you're working on, you want to create memory devices or mnemonics for each note, if possible. That's going to just help you remember the note's location. So we already know this is the E. Most people out there, that's like one of the first things you learn is the names of the strings. Okay, so we already know this is E. So what about F? How are you going to remember this is F? Well, when we looked at the construction of the chromatic scale, we know that the F is a half step away from E. So we're going to tie F's location to knowing where E is, okay? And so let's think of F as E's neighbor, all right? All right, now what about G? How are we going to remember this is G? Well, what about the G chord? This is like one of the first chords that you learn. So the G chord is going to help you remember, this is where G is, all right? Another thing is G's on a dot, and, let's say you didn't know, for instance, that this was a G chord. Say you haven't learned that yet, but you know of the G3 trio, and this is at the 3rd fret, okay, G3, that's sometimes G3, that phrase is associated with the G3 trio. So maybe that'll help you. So whatever type of, memory device that you can use to help you remember the location, use it. All right. So what about A being at the 5th fret? Okay. Well, this is where we tune the guitar. Okay. Hopefully most of you out there know the old school way of tuning the guitar, where you just go to the 5th fret of every string except the G string, to tune the guitar with itself. Okay, so A on the E string, when we think of where is A on the E string, we think tune the guitar. Okay, that's going to help us. All right, now what about B at the 7th fret? Well, B is on a dot, okay? And these dots are there for a reason. They're like landmarks. They're there to help you kind of get orientated. So you want to use them for that purpose. So what about B at the 7th fret? Well, we could think of, for instance, the honeybee and the honeycomb. Okay, the honeycomb is made of 7 hexagons. Okay, so we could kind of relate B7, like the honeybee, and the 7 hexagons that make up the honeycomb as B at the 7th fret on the low E. And if that, if that doesn't work for you, try to think of something else. Sometimes, you just have to, just learn it without any mnemonics if that doesn't work for you, okay? All right, so now C is after B. C is at the 8th fret. So we're going to tie the C's location to B, all right? And, I would encourage you to just remember that fact if you didn't know it already about the honeybee and the 7 hexagons, and maybe if you didn't know that already, maybe just knowing that fact is going to help you remember, hey, B is at the 7th fret, okay? And so anyway, we're going to tie C's location to B. C is B's neighbor. C is a half step away from B. All right, now what about D being at the 10th fret? Okay, Well, D is a whole step away from E, and hopefully you already know that the notes repeat here at the double dots, okay, at the 12th fret. So if you already know that E is here, then we can tie D's location to E, that D is a whole step down from E. All right. So the main objective here is to map out the key of C on the particular string we're working on. In this case, it's E. And then try to tie some type of memory devices, you know, even if they're corny, whatever works, okay? And, you know, that's going to help you with this whole, you know, note recognition system, okay? So now, once we have the notes mapped out in the key of C on the particular string, now we want to exercise our note recognition ability for those particular notes. And how can we do that? Well, one way is just simply going, you know, E, F, G, A, B, and thinking about our mnemonics, you know, as we go. Another way is to use the cycle of diatonic fourths in the key of C. Okay, what do I mean by that, the cycle of diatonic fourths? Okay, well, if you think of the key of C, the C scale, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, okay, and if we start, say, on C, for instance, and then count every fourth note, okay, we're going to come up with this sequence of notes, C, F, B, E, A, D, G. Okay, so, okay, now I've got to remember something else now, right? Well, you know, it's not that hard, you know. C to F, okay, think of cycle fourths, okay, C, F, and then the word bead. You can spell bead, right? B-E-A-D, and then put G there at the very end. And we're going to use this sequence of notes to exercise our note recognition ability. You know, it's a lot easier to just walk up the string and just do this, E, F, G, A, right? We're not really thinking that much. But if we have to skip around, which we'll do if we use that cycle, you know, it's going to really force us to think. So what you would do is once you have that cycle memorized, C, F, B, E, A, D, G, okay, we're going to play that on the low E string. So it would be like this, C, F, B, E, A, D, G. All right, so you noticed how I skipped around on the string, so I really have to know my notes in order to do that, okay? And something else I want to point out, when you are doing this, don't learn this cycle here as like you would learn a lick, you know, going C, F, B, E, A, D, G, or like a melody to where you're not really thinking. Okay, you really want to think about the note's location. Okay, because if you're just learning it like a lick and you're learning, okay, I move from here to here and so on, but you're not tying all the notes to it, then it's defeating the whole purpose. All right, so one thing you could do is put a timer on or have a friend, you know, time you while you do this, or, you know, if you could do it yourself, or practice with a metronome, okay? Put a metronome on a comfortable setting and then just play with the click in time and do this exercise. And, you know, gradually increase the speed, okay? And that's going to force you to think faster, all right, and really get to know the notes. So, once you've done that and you've practiced this cycle and you really are comfortable with where all the natural notes are, then you want to exercise your ability to find all the flat notes, okay? Now, I like to use this cycle called the order of flats, okay? And the order of flats is B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, and G flat. So the word bead, okay, with G on the end, but all of those are flats, okay? So we're going to use, you know, hopefully you've stopped the video and you've you've got down the key of C and you've done that note recognition exercise, you know, with the cycle of diatonic fourths in C, and you're comfortable with that now. And so now let's exercise the flat note recognition. Okay, and we're going to use what we've already learned to help us find where the flat notes are. You know, the flat notes are just going to be a half step below the natural notes. Okay, all right, so we have B flat here, right? And we know that because hopefully you already know that this is B, okay, here at the 7th fret. So anyway, we got B flat here, and then we've got E flat here because E is at the 12th fret. And then we have A flat, right, because we know A is right here where we tune the guitar. And then D flat is here at the 9th fret, okay, and then G flat here at the 2nd fret, okay. So again, you want to either put on a metronome or a timer and exercise. You know, with the timer, you would time yourself, like I said, and establish a time that you can do this, all right, and then try to beat that time, okay, if you didn't want to, you know, practice with the metronome. Both ways are good. You know, the metronome is going to help you work on your timing. Okay, so, all right, so once you've practiced playing the order of flats, B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat, then you want to put the whole thing together, okay? The whole thing together in the sense of you want to play the cycle of perfect fourths. Okay, and the cycle of perfect fourths is C, F, B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat, B, E, A, D, G. Okay, now the perfect fourth interval is 2 whole steps and a half step. So remember when we were talking about the construction of the chromatic scale? So you can choose a note in the chromatic scale, and if you go 2 whole steps and then a half step, that is a perfect fourth above that particular note. All right, so how would we memorize this particular cycle? Okay, well, I'm going to share with you a visualization technique that really helps my students memorize this cycle of perfect fourths. And again, we're going to use this cycle of perfect fourths as a tool to help us exercise our note recognition ability. And not only that, you can use it for other things as well. Like if you wanted to, let's say you learned a new chord like this, right? Like the C major 7 here, right? And you knew that the root was here, okay? So to become fluent with it, you know, you could use that cycle of perfect fourths to practice this. You could say, okay, C, F, B flat, E flat, A flat, and so on, okay, to really become fluent with moving that shape all around the guitar. Okay, so, all right, so let's get back to this visualization technique of how we remember the cycle of perfect fourths, okay, without doing all this calculating in our heads. Okay, so imagine a bead necklace, okay? A bead necklace, a necklace, you know, is a circle. It's round, right? Okay, up at the top, we have the clasp of this necklace, okay? And the clasp is going to symbolize the notes C and F, okay? This whole necklace thing is just going to be a symbol for the cycle of fourths, and it's going to help you remember this cycle, okay? So the clasp is going to symbolize C and F, okay, and now we've got a row of flat beads on this necklace, okay, and then so those flat beads are going to be B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, and G flat. They're going to be symbolic of those notes. And then after that we have a row of natural beads, okay, and that's going to be B, E, A, D, G. Now we're back up here at the clasp, okay. So again, you have the clasp, which is symbolic of C and F. Then we have our row of flat beads, B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat. Then our row of natural beads, B, E, A, D, G. All right, hopefully you have that memorized. Let's say you're still struggling with it. Another way to think about it is break it up and think of C and F, okay, and think of cycle fourths, C, F. And then think of the word bead, G. The word bead with G at the end, but this bead G is all flats. Okay, and then after that you've got bead G again, but that's going to be all natural, B-E-A-D-G. Okay, so hopefully by now you have that memorized, because I mean if you can spell the word bead, you've already got 90% of it memorized already anyway. Okay, so again, we're going to use this as a tool to help us with our note recognition, to help us memorize and exercise that ability, I should say. All right, so now you want to do this. All right, C, F, B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat, B, E, A, D, G. Okay. So again, you noticed how I was skipping around on the guitar. That forces you to really think and know where these notes are. And so practice that with a timer, or a metronome, and get that down. All right, so now let's have a look at the A string.